Chinese manufacturing is shutting down. The CCP's global supply chain advantage is being dismantled piece by piece. Today, we take a deep dive into how the One Big Beautiful Bill is shaking the foundations of China's economy. Welcome back to FinalWar with Katherine Hu. Lately, strange things have been happening across China's manufacturing hubs. In Shenzhen, electronics factories saw orders vanish overnight. In Jiangsu, pharmaceutical raw material suppliers saw their clients disappeared without warning. In Yiwu, Zhejiang, the global parcel hub, even Shein and Temu shipments have suddenly plummeted. What's going on? Didn't the US and China just sign a 90-day trade truce on May 12th? Didn't they agree to ease customs procedures and loosen tech restrictions? And yet, Chinese exporters are discovering the orders aren't coming back. Clients have gone silent. There was no official notice, but in reality, Chinese companies are already under silent sanctions. We traced this silent industrial chain all the way back and found the real trigger. The One Big Beautiful Bill, or OBBB for short, which had just passed the US Congress on July 3rd, along with a series of aggressive executive orders issued by the US government over the past few months. On the surface, the Big Beautiful Bill is a fiscal reform package, seemingly unrelated to China. But in reality, its most devastating impact lands squarely on Chinese manufacturing. Everyone who's actually read the bill, from Wall Street to the Pentagon, all the way to Zhongnanhai, knows the truth. This isn't just a tax bill. It's a wartime fiscal mobilization plan for rebuilding America from within, decoupling from adversaries abroad, and strategically containing the Chinese Communist Party. It looks like a policy tool, but it hits like a weapon, and no one feels more nervous than Beijing. The international impact of the Big Beautiful Bill is most visible in its dual approach: economic restrictions and military investment, both of which explicitly position the Chinese Communist Party as America's primary challenger. One of the most consequential provisions is Section 70,514, Restrictions on Advanced Manufacturing Production Credit, which introduces a new framework called Prohibited Foreign Entity, PFE. Under this framework, China is officially designated a country of concern, with specified foreign entities and foreign-influenced entities subject to strict limitations. For example, if a company has 20% of its equity owned by Chinese entities, or 15% of its debt financed by Chinese interests, it could be classified as foreign-influenced, losing access to key tax credits. This deliberately broad definition grants the US Treasury Department significant discretionary power, triggering a chilling effect that forces corporations to proactively cut ties with China. The goal is clear: to dismantle China's global dominance in solar panels, battery production, and critical mineral processing, and to accelerate a strategic supply chain realignment. How did Chinese suppliers manage to infiltrate Western defense systems? Not through missiles or satellites, but through tiny civilian-looking parts: capacitors, wires, coatings, screws, lens modules, small components, big consequences. One faulty capacitor and the missile's guidance fails. One wire shorted and a fire control system crashes. They may be cheap, but each one can decide whether a weapon lives or dies. In the past, Chinese firms exploited the concept of military-civil fusion to pose as civilian suppliers and slip these components into Western systems. But now, the Big Beautiful Bill classifies Chinese capital embedded in defense supply chains as a top-tier national security threat. Here's what it mandates. Rare earths for military use must be sourced from domestic US facilities or from allies like Australia. Electronic control systems. All circuit boards must be made in North America, no Chinese parts allowed. Drone components made in China, banned. Zero tolerance. Optical fire control modules. If even one Chinese origin component is detected, the entire project loses military qualification. And when it comes to semiconductors, China's out. Even back-end packaging and testing is disqualified. You see, the CCP knew it couldn't make cutting-edge chips, so it cut a deal. You design it in the US, Taiwan, or Japan. We'll just package it in China. Outsourcing only. You save money, we earn some foreign exchange. Win-win. But that was always a dangerous fiction. Why? Because packaging and testing gives access to vital chip data. Clock speeds, thermal logic, interface protocols, which can be reverse engineered. Some Chinese firms have even inserted backdoors or spyware during packaging. Others mislabel good chips as defective, then quietly redirect them to military use. That's why the Big Beautiful Bill doesn't just trace chip origins. It now tracks who touched it, who labeled it, who tested it. Even TSMC had a production line routed through Jiangsu for packaging, and the whole project got scrapped. This isn't a war. This isn't a sanction. It's the surgical removal of Chinese manufacturing from the American system. Here's what's even more stunning. Before Congress even gave the final green light on July 3rd, the kill switch had already been flipped. Many of the bill's core provisions were quietly activated in advance by US federal agencies, state governments, and the private sector. Take the Department of Energy, DOE, for example. Back in June, they launched a new clean energy approval system. Tucked inside is a new mechanism, supplier background screening. If any component in your energy project comes from China, the entire application may be flagged as high risk and frozen indefinitely. Meanwhile, states like California, Texas, and Georgia began quietly rewriting their bidding rules for renewable energy projects. Starting late June, they added new requirements: a full disclosure of funding sources, origin of materials, and energy mix, with a sharp focus on weeding out any CCP-linked capital, investment residue, or labor traces. No press release, but Chinese bidders have already been silently blacklisted as high-risk entities. And on the market side, the shift began even earlier. Starting in late May, many major Western clients began switching suppliers away from China. Their reason? Blunt but honest. It's not that your tech isn't good. We just can't afford to use you anymore. Once the bill passes, we'll get hit with retroactive taxes, audits, and regulatory risks. So what we're seeing is a preemptive strike, a full-scale surgical decoupling that didn't wait for Congress to vote. The global supply chain has already begun cutting China out, sector by sector, and Chinese manufacturing would be excised from the system like a tumor. Let's turn back to something life and death: the pharmaceutical sector. During the pandemic, the US was shocked to discover a terrifying fact. Nearly 90% of its critical drug ingredients came from China. From antibiotics to basic painkillers, Chinese factories had come to dominate the global pharmaceutical supply chain. That triggered a wake-up call in Washington. America must break its dependence on Chinese-made medicines. In response, the US government signed Executive Order 13944 on August 6, 2020, marking the first time federal agencies were required to prioritize domestically manufactured essential medicines and active pharmaceutical ingredients in public health emergencies. This May, the administration went even further, signing a new executive order aimed at eliminating regulatory barriers that hinder the onshoring of critical pharmaceutical production. With these two executive orders in place, the US government is moving toward three key objectives. First, government pharmaceutical procurement will prioritize domestically manufactured medicines, framing it as a national security imperative. Second, the government will fast-track approvals for new active pharmaceutical ingredient, API, plants, offering lower energy costs and generous tax breaks, but with one unspoken condition: no sourcing from China. Third, all military and strategic emergency use medications must be produced entirely on US soil, with zero links to China anywhere along the supply chain. Now just imagine, how do you think those Chinese API factory owners in Jiangsu, Shandong, and Zhejiang are feeling right now? On July 4th, the moment the big, beautiful bill was signed into law, 3 of America's most advanced warplanes took to the skies: the B-2, the F-22, and the F-35. This wasn't a rehearsal. This wasn't a show of strength. It was a signal, a message aimed straight at Beijing. This bill is not just a line item on a budget. It's a live-action war budget, activated. 3 sections in particular aim straight for the CCP's strategic vulnerabilities. Section 20,003, the Golden Dome for America. Its mission: strengthen the national missile defense system. What does that mean? It means building satellite-based early warning systems, creating space-based intercept platforms, upgrading land-based anti-missile defenses. All of it designed to counter China's DF-17 and DF-27 hypersonic missiles. If the CCP ever dares launch, the US now has a playbook to strike first, or shoot it down. Section 20,005. On the surface, it sounds harmless. Support low-cost weapons, mass production, and deployment. In reality, it's the most lethal clause in the whole bill. It opens the floodgates for mass-producing cheap weapons, missiles, drones, interceptors, rapid manufacturing, fast deployment. Section 20,009, it says it outright: enhance Indo-Pacific combat readiness. The US Indo-Pacific Command is going to expand, stockpile more weapons, build more forward bases, and launch full-spectrum warfare capabilities, cyber, signal, and AI-based tactical systems. In plain terms, the US is preparing to strike the CCP at any moment, right inside the first island chain. But the most brutal part of this bill is what it does to the entire chain. Energy to manufacturing to defense. A full-spectrum restructuring. One clause in particular shocked everyone. The US will restart its coal industry. Is that environmental backsliding? No. It's wartime energy strategy. Why coal? Because when guided missiles rain down, wind turbines and solar panels become scrap metal. Only coal-fired plants can survive and restart quickly. Keep the grid alive during war. In a shooting war, no one cares who's green. They care who's still standing when the last shell is fired. So, do you see it now? This isn't just a tax bill. It's America's new Military-Industrial Mobilization Act. Through tax cuts and regulatory loosening, the Big Beautiful Bill opens a legal superhighway for global capital to flow into the United States. And no one will rush in faster than the Chinese Communist regime. We're talking about Chinese state-owned enterprises, red aristocrats and their family wealth, foreign joint ventures cashing out of China, real estate liquidation channels, and offshore dollar clearing pools, all trying to escape and land safely in America. Conservative estimates suggest this capital flight could reach $8 trillion, wealth accumulated over the past 2 decades across mainland China and offshore channels in Hong Kong and Macau. For example, Section 111001 of the bill amends Section 168K of the Internal Revenue Code, IRC, allowing for 100% bonus depreciation on qualified production property, QPP. In plain terms, businesses that invest in U.S. manufacturing can deduct 100% of the cost of qualified production assets in the very first year they are placed in service, paying no taxes on that investment in the initial year. For entrepreneurs planning to build factories in America, this is a massive financial incentive. Another example is Section 70,421, which permanently extends and expands the Opportunity Zone program. This provision revises the Internal Revenue Code to introduce new capital gains deferral mechanisms and make the Opportunity Zone framework permanent. It offers significant capital gains tax relief to manufacturing businesses that choose to invest inside designated opportunity zones. Here's how it works. Say you're a wealthy American who invested heavily in China for 2 decades. You made a fortune, but never dared bring the profits back to the US, because as soon as you cash out, you owe capital gains taxes. Up to 1/3 of your profits, gone. But now, that's over. If you invest those China profits back into certified US opportunity zones, you can defer the taxes, or even avoid them entirely. So now, money made under the CCP can come home tax-free, wrapped in the patriotic packaging of revitalizing American industry. Analysts say this could drive $4 to $6 trillion in capital repatriation. This is the deepest play on the US chessboard. More lethal than tariffs, more surgical than chip bans. This is how the CCP loses its final edge. No wonder the Chinese state media, Xinhua, Global Times, People's Daily, are all attacking the Big Beautiful Bill with angry headlines, while staying eerily silent about the real damage it will cause inside China. Because this isn't just a fiscal challenge for Beijing, it's a matter of survival. This bill strikes China at a systemic, strategic level, undermining all 6 pillars of the CCP's global advantage: supply chains, tax arbitrage, technology access, energy inputs, capital channels, and international credibility. China's so-called cost advantage, built on subsidies, tax evasion, and cheap labor, is about to disappear. For good. Get the real story behind the CCP's shifting power games and see where US-China relations are headed next. Support the vision of a new China without communism. Subscribe now and join us in bringing the truth to light.